Welcome back to another episode of A Gift from Adversity. My name is Juri Love. I'm your host. Thank you very much for tuning in. Today, we are recording episode 161. Before I introduce my guest, I want to introduce my book, which is called A Gift from Adversity by Juri, Juri, Love, Love. It's available on Amazon. Please check it out. It is about my life, overcoming child sex abuse, domestic violence, bullying, and homelessness. After I published my book, I got a lot of messages from all over the world, people sharing their stories. And I felt very compelled to start this podcast, which I'm very grateful for over 161 guests, including today's, sharing not only their adversities, but the tools that they use to overcome and a gift that came from it. So let's invite our guest. Hi, C.
Hello.
Thank you so much for coming to A Gift from Adversity, episode 161.
Thank you so much for having me.
Great. Can you tell our audience your name, your title, what you do, and if you have any social media or anything that you want to promote?
Sure. So my name is Cie Morin, and C is actually short for Nancy. So everybody asks if C is my real name, and it is my real name. It's the only name that I go by, but it is short for Nancy. Cie Morin, that is my maiden name. I was previously married, and this is sort of a new name for me after many, many years. So I'm very proud. And I actually put under my name there the name of my business, Aesthetics by Cie, because it's not the easiest word to spell. But if you are looking for me on social media, I am on both Facebook and Instagram. You can find me under Aesthetics by Cie. And then my personal ones are just my name. And on Instagram, it's CIE7997.
And what do you do for your business? Can you tell us? And I got to actually experience it.
Yes. So aesthetics is the practice of doing skin, basically. So I perform facials, waxing, I do body waxing and body treatments. More recently, I do fascia blasting, which I can talk about a little bit more later on. But I do that in a spa setting. And I just have a one-woman spa studio inside a busy salon here in Fitchburg, Massachusetts.
And what is your joy of doing your business?
I love being an esthetician. I've been doing it for about 20 years this year, and it's because it's so nurturing. I really identify as a mother more than anything else in my life. I do have 2 grown children, and I loved mothering them. I love mothering my friends. It's just kind of who I am. So I love the nurturing part, the part that I have a client coming in with the need to feel relaxed, to feel beautiful, to feel however she wants to feel that day. And by the end of the treatment, I'm able to cause that change in her and or him. I do have male clients as well, but primarily women. So it's a sisterhood, and I just love what I do all day. I've been very blessed these past 20 years.
And let me tell you, I got to experience Cie Morin's amazing spa service, and I was absolutely in heaven, and I'm so grateful. And she gave me these cute dresses as well, so I'm so grateful for your friendship. And then shout out to our mutual friend John Keo, who introduced
Yeah, he made the connection.
So let's dive into our first question, which is the adversity. So can you please tell us, what was your adversity?
Well, I would say, going into this show, I watched some episodes, including John Keogh's, and I was so touched by his story, by your personal story. I do have to give you a quick little shout out for your book. I did just get it in the mail. I'm so excited to start reading it today. It's like, what a perfect combo to have this conversation and then be able to start reading your book. And I think comparatively, I've had a very easy, blessed, privileged life. And I know you should never compare your life to anyone, but I just want to acknowledge the fact that I have been very lucky in my life to have sort of a boring, blessed life. I grew up with my parents, and I have one brother, one younger brother. But when I really was thinking about like what adversity could I possibly share with Juri that I've experienced, I would say it is codependency. So I had a very, very close relationship with my maternal grandfather, both of my maternal grandparents, but specifically my grandfather. He and I really clicked, and he was my person. And I lost him to cancer when I was 12 years old in 1991. And, as you grow up and you go through your life, you don't really think about what the thing was that really caused, so many problems for you, unless it's something very specific, very big, and very bad. And so I think everybody loses their grandparents, right? Like, it just happens. It's part of life. So as it went along, I didn't give it as much acknowledgement as I could about the fact that losing him was, in fact, an abandonment. He didn't mean to abandon me, but he did. And thus forward, I had sort of abandonment issues, and it manifested into codependency, to the point where once I sort of started to, sexually mature, and I started thinking about taking on a boyfriend, that was the point in my life when I really sort of latched on to someone and allowed them to treat me very badly, and to the point where it was blatant abuse for years, more than 1 year. And again, still at a very young age, but because I had this codependent personality disorder, as I was later diagnosed, I was not able to identify the fact that that was a bad situation for me and that I needed to get away from it. All I knew was that my emotions, my mood, everything about my life was hinging on this other person. Do they love me? Are they with me? Are they touching me? Are they close to me? Can I see them? Do I trust them? Everything. And if you're codependent on a great person, I guess in the long run, you'll be okay. But 9 times out of 10, the person that you're codependent on is more concerned about their own well-being than yours. It is your responsibility to care about your own well-being. And when you're codependent, you don't do that. You really do hinge every single thing, including your mood and just your mindset, on another person, which is very, very damaging. So I would say that was sort of the beginning. That was the beginning of the end for me. Before that, I was a pretty well-adjusted child. I'm the oldest, and I'm very boisterous. I was like a tomboy when I was a little child. So I used to like fight the boys and climb the trees and do all the things. And so then becoming codependent, I think, is such a weird thing to say. How could a child like that was so assertive and all those things, type A personality, do that to herself? But I really think it was losing my papa and having that void in my life, and then just really looking to fill it and not having self-awareness about the situation, because it only got worse. Every person I think that I kind of added onto the roster after that, whether it was toxic friendships, bad work environments, I just really never held any kind of boundaries. I never knew about boundaries. And I always sort of let people abuse me a little bit more than you should never let anybody abuse you anyway. But I really let people push the line with me a lot for many, many years, essentially until the end of my marriage. And that was like the final straw, I guess, was really, I really did spend 25 years with someone who did not care about me. He cared about himself only, which is really sad when you're in a partnership. But it was very eye-opening at the end. And certainly, I went through it. So I have lots of experience now to look back on. And I think every experience you go through, you can learn something from it. And again, what you do in this format, in taking the adversity and then trying to really figure out how you helped yourself, and then calling it a gift at the end. What a beautiful thing. So hopefully I have lots of little nuggets that I can look back on as learning experiences, and just have all sorts of little gifts around me to make me better in my next phase of life. I'm going to become a grandmother, hopefully within the next 5-ish years. So I'm very excited. See, I had such a wonderful relationship with my grandparents. It's like my ultimate goal to be a good grandparent and to have that kind of a special relationship with my grandchildren.
Well, thank you so much for sharing it. It's very interesting that you did not know about the codependency till later in your life. And a lot of us, especially as a woman, especially my culture, Japanese culture, we were taught to devote ourselves to men and dedicate ourselves to men. And I am not worthy without it. I am not worthy without a husband or children. And that's our culture. And I just had a guest, episode 159. He has this wonderful Instagram solo underscore experiences. And then Michael, who came from Chicago, talked about men's perspective of being single and being like independent, but how much of the pressure that we feel even in America, that people will maybe judge you. Are you okay being single? Like, are you um just like, suggestion, like, are you married? Are you going to get married, having children, stuff? Are you going to remarry? You know what I mean? So it's very much a
Yes.
society pressure, and the wedding, and perfect American dreams, and then it's just like lot goes on. Not only the codependency and losing your papa at age 12, but would you say some of the pressure plays in a role for this too?
Yeah, I mean, it's 12 is a rough age. You're going through a lot of different things, and like I said, you're maturing. And the only thing that I really had to look at in my family were these very traditional marriages, and as you said, all the things that were expected of us. And even though I was very smart, I always did very, very well in school, despite any emotional stuff that I was ever going through. I always showed up at school and did my thing. And even when I didn't show up at school, I would still show up to take the test, and I would pass it, and I'd be fine. So I think everybody expected me to go to college, and whether it was expected of me or whether it was just something that I pushed myself to do because of an ideal that I had in my mind, I did get married when I was 18 years old or 19 years old. I was with my husband from the time I was 18. So I really think that being a young bride too was just the thing that sort of set off my issue with my identity. So that's why I went on and on about my name in the beginning, because even just my name, I had a legal name my whole life, and then you get married at 18, 19 years old, you have to change your name. So now all of a sudden it's like, okay, I have no more name. And really, I was Mrs. my husband's name. My name wasn't even my name. It was Mrs. Him. And I had to keep that in mind. And like you said, in that sort of submissive, traditional way, I just sort of buried myself. And that's, I think, really was the basis of the codependency, was just making sure that my husband was happy, making sure that my children were happy. And he's not a bad person deep down inside, but he is concerned about himself. That's the whole thing. He's very, very concerned about himself only. And so it was really for me, once I did learn about my codependency, also not putting blame on people, not again, sort of seeking a source for something. Everything has to come internally. And it did all start inside. Other people lose their grandparents, and this does not happen to them. This happened to happen to me because I also had very low self-esteem. And I think maybe if we were to add a little tertiary adversity, it would be that I've just always suffered from low self-esteem. And that could be a myriad of things, and compounded things lead up to that. But definitely in my healing, self-love has been a big, big part of it, because when you're codependent, you really do not care about yourself at all. You are solely concerned for that other person, that source. So I just bringing it back to myself was the most important thing that I've done so far.
So we'll definitely share how the tools for the second question, but I want to elaborate a little bit more about the adversity part of it. So mentally wise, the codependency, and then you mentioned about like latching on to other people, and then the happiness depends on other people rather than you, and then maybe the anxiety that comes around it, like what if that person didn't message you, what if that person is not expected of what you thought would be, or what if, like, the love and devotion, anything invested, it's not coming back to the way that you expected. Like, can you please tell us a little bit about what codependency looks like?
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy, I have to say. So I experienced also losing my baby brother. My younger brother died in 2019 after a traumatic brain injury that he received in Iraq when he had fought there in 2004. So I had just lost him in 2019, and then less than a year later experienced the COVID shutdown. So because of the industry that I'm in, I was one of the ones affected by the fact that my whole business had to be shut down. I could not see my clients. I had no income. It was very stressful. At the same time, my ex-husband also is in the same industry that I am in. And so he was shut down at the same time, and we were trapped at home together, which I'm laughing and I'm trying to make a little bit of a joke. It was very bad. It was just a time that sort of everything was coming to a head. And at that time, I started therapy. So I had gone to therapy several times in my life before, and I just am going to attribute the lack of success in the fact that I was never able to find a therapist that I connected with properly. I'm a big proponent of therapy, but you must have a therapist that you connect with in the right way. And I just never was able to find that. So thankfully in 2020, during the thick of all of the mess, I got myself into therapy. And it was because I was starting to have a really rough time accepting reality. I didn't, I mean, think of it at the level so bad that like I would wake up in the morning and I would actually question what year it was, where I was, like, am I a teenager? Am I a grown woman? Did Sam die? Did that happen? Was that a dream? Did I dream that? That kind of stuff. Because I'm not going to work. I don't have my structured day. Me and my ex-husband were fighting all day, every day. The poor children were trapped at home trying to Zoom from their rooms. And it was just a really deep, dark time. So going to therapy, she actually diagnosed me with 5 things. And I think if you're just a middle-aged white housewife from suburbia, no matter how bad your life is, at the end of the day, it's like, I've had so much privilege. How bad could it possibly be? This woman gave me 5 mental disorders. I was like, oh my God, what should I do? Can I ever leave my house again? And she said, yes, you're absolutely fine. She prefaced it by saying, thankfully, she's such a sweetheart. She prefaced it by saying, you are very intelligent and you're not crazy. So she said, part of what you've been experiencing is called gaslighting. And so what she did was she very systematically explained to me my diagnoses. And then she said, I want you to go home and read about some of these things that I've told you. So you're not feeling scared and overwhelmed. You can really understand and take it and start to process what it is that you're going through. And she said, but I do think one of the things that you're dealing with is called narcissistic abuse syndrome. And you can only get that if somebody who is suffering from narcissistic personality disorder is abusing you on the regular for a long, long time. And so I was like, oh, okay, who could that be? And she said, I can't diagnose anybody but you, friend. So what I'm going to do is give you some information. You go home and read. We'll talk again. So the next time I came back in, I said, it's my ex-husband. Well, at the time it was my husband. I said, it's my husband. And she said, okay, so this is the thing. She said, you have anxious codependent personality disorder. And so she actually did recommend I read this book. So I know we'll get to the tools later, but she gave me a book. So that's how I started. I went home and I read the book. As soon as I read the book, I understood everything that was going on. And it made me feel, the first thing I felt was like stupid and ignorant. And how could I be 43 years old, however old I was, and not understand these concepts? I had heard the term gaslighting before. I guess I just never really applied it to my life or really understood. And when you're inside of something, it's so much harder to see it. And that's what it was. I was inside a marriage for 25 years. And again, my husband is not a bad man. And he's the father of my children. So I'm not going to go on this podcast and say terrible things about him. However, I was not able to love myself, focus on myself, think about myself, put myself first ever from the time I was 18 years old until I was in my mid-40s. So I really started my healing journey going to the source of this and saying, where is my emotional maturity in this? Because if I'm going to start trying to process things as a big girl, as a grown-up, and really not blame my ex-husband, I'm not going to put it all on him. It is my fault. I did this to myself, you know what I mean? And dig myself out of the hole. I really had to acknowledge the fact that, I have these disorders. I need to learn about them. I can change my brain function. And so things start to overlap at this point because I was trying to learn so much about my brother and his brain disorder. I realized I was like, you know what? It doesn't even matter if you've gotten a knock on the head. When you go through emotional turmoil, you're damaging your brain. That's what trauma is. The definition of trauma is when your brain hits a wall with information. It doesn't know where to go. This doesn't make any kind of sense. Like if I have a parent and they're supposed to love me and they're hurting me, that doesn't make any kind of sense why my parent's hurting me. You hit that wall of trauma. Moving past that wall is, and acceptance, is really being able to choose a different way to think and having a different mindset. And that was the point that I was at. I was like, I have to completely change my mind about things, completely change my mindset about things, the way I talk to myself, the way I treat myself. And it really has to be, I have to be the one to be held accountable for all of this. And moving from that point forward was such a moment, there really was like that, when the light goes on, you're like, oh my God, this is it. And it feels so good, actually, once you understand what's happening around you and you don't feel like you're drowning or that you have a blindfold on, because that's how I felt, I guess. But my marriage created a lot of stability, again, because he wasn't a bad person per se. He was a very faithful husband. He was a very diligent husband, and he showed up every single day. He always went to work. He took care of our kids, and he created a really nice structure. And for the other issues that I have, for my depression, for my anxiety, all these other things that my doctor had diagnosed me with, just sheer structure itself is good enough for a codependent, because again, the codependency is really the emotional part of it. And, when I get into what I learned about during my therapy sessions in cognitive behavioral therapy, it was very easy for me to say, okay, I've pinpointed the fact that when I'm emotionally processing something, I'm 12 years old. And didn't I already tell you I lost my papa when I was 12? So I was like, I need to run to my bed, lay down, get in the prone position. I need to cry, wail, I do the keening. I'm Sicilian, so we can really be dramatic about it. And, I would go to my bed and cry and cry. And I think back, and I'll talk to my children now, and I'm like, hey guys, sorry that when you guys were little, when mommy would get emotionally triggered, I would go to my bed and cry like a little child. And they were like, oh, it's okay, mommy, we just knew you needed naps. And they're so loving and sweet and accepting. But, that's how I was. Even as a grown woman, I would break down emotionally to the age of about 12 years old. And going through my therapy and stuff, I discovered that that's what happens when you're processing things in your brain from an emotional standpoint. You will only ever be able to process as maturely as you are with your emotional intelligence. And that's, I had hit a wall at 12. And so then being married all of those years, I was just very, like I said, blessed, I think, even with narcissistic abuse, even with whatever emotional turmoil I was going with, I was safe. I had a home, I had structure. And that was really it for me. That's all I wanted. So I think when I talk to people about codependency, I say to them, yes, you need to be safe. You need to have a home. You need to have all of these things. But you really need to for it to be healthy, you need to balance it with your emotional well-being. And really, there has to be a reckoning. You have to come clean with yourself and say, am I mature about things when I become emotionally triggered? When I'm trying to talk to people in a mature way, do I start to degrade because I'm processing emotionally and not rationally, which is how we always should be processing things, to be able to do it fairly and all of those sort of things. So that was a big one for me, just going through COVID and seeing the light on a lot of these things, because once you get to the other side of it, it is, for me, I felt a lot of shame. And thankfully, after my brother died, I started going to a bereavement group with my mom. I'm a huge proponent of groups, any kind of communal situation. If it's a book club, if it's a bereavement group, if it's anything, just get together with your folks, because that's what's going to heal you always. And when I went there, one of the first things that they said that was the most helpful thing to me for anybody grieving, anybody going through anything really, is shame and regret are two things that are in no circumstance ever going to be helpful. So right off the bat, if you feel shame about something, or if you're feeling regretful about a situation, stop. Instantly stop. We're not even going to entertain it. I can't. I'm sorry. I want to be gentle with you, but I cannot allow this, because harping on shame and harping on things that you regret is self-harm. again, once I started learning and I really understood what was happening in my body, I realized what I was doing to myself emotionally, how I was physically harming myself. That's a big, big no-no. We're not going to be shaming anybody or ourselves. We're not going to do regrets because it's already over. Whatever happened, happened. We can't go. If anybody can do the time traveling, hit me up. Let me know, because I will make some changes. But actively, I do not regret things, because how could you? Like, everything that we've ever accomplished to this point, or you and I, very thankfully, we have our children. We can never regret anything because we wouldn't have our kiddos. So whatever that point is of value for you in your life, you wouldn't have gotten there without going through it. So try not to have any regret. And shame is just not helpful. It's doing that to yourself is never, ever, ever going to help you in any scenario.
Yes. So we'll save that part of how you overcame, including those tools, for the second question. So my question about adversity for you still is that when you are going through the relationship and the marriage, I know you kind of mentioned before that podcast that you had a boyfriend as well, and then your mom and the dad had like a long-term traditional marriage, and then the pressure maybe like this is the only way. So I know you mentioned about the divorce. How hard was it to end your 20 or over 20 years marriage?
It was very difficult. And I have to tell you, it was not my choice. It was not my choice. My husband left me. And I tell people that, they're like, oh, shocked. They're like, oh, you're so pretty, or you guys seem so happy. Or, again, whatever people do to think that like this is the most preposterous thing in the world, that these two people could be getting a divorce. He decided he wanted to leave me. So, there was nothing I could do at that point. But I didn't not want to be married. Like I enjoyed being a married person. I enjoyed it because it felt right. And again, because I was living with this anxious anxiety disorder, this anxious codependency disorder, it felt natural and right to be married no matter what. And that really was my awakening to understanding that the codependency, because I was like, wow, I really am willing to stay no matter what. And it wasn't like a heartfelt love. It was just this, I don't know, this obligation, this feeling of righteousness. Like, no, this is the right thing to do. So as he's moving things out of the house, one was the reality part of it. Like I said, I had been questioning reality. I just felt so off because of losing my brother's name was Sam, losing my Sammy, going through COVID, trying to get my kids through it. It was a very, very surreal time. So I just felt very off. I lost so much weight. I was about 96 pounds. So by the time my husband actually left the door and I shut the door and I was like, I am a single person, I was 96 pounds. Right now I'm about 112. So I'm not a very big person. I'm little like you. But 96 pounds was too thin. That was not good. But I wasn't eating. I couldn't eat. So I just did a lot of crying. I did a lot of, like I said, laying in bed, just wailing, like, why? And I think back on it, I'm like, oh God, how embarrassing. I mean, I'm not going to feel shame about it. But it was embarrassing. Because I just had no coping skills. I was like, my husband's gone. I don't know how to do anything without my husband. I am his wife first and foremost in this world. What the heck am I going to do now? Where to go from here? The thought of like other men touching me, I wanted to set myself on fire. I was like, I'd rather just set myself on fire than be with another man. That's fine. So that was really, really difficult for me. That feeling, that vortex feeling of being like, this is the end for me. So of course I was like, it's fine. Again, I was like thinking about becoming a grandmother. I was like, I'll just be like this celibate old woman who is just in my house by myself. It's fine. But deep down I was like, I can't believe this man left me. I can't believe he really actually did it. Crazy. So it was really hard. That was probably the most difficult time. I would say of the three things, of losing my brother, going through COVID, and getting a divorce, it really was the divorce. Because it was my very identity, the very foundation of my entire adult life. I mean, I met my husband when I was 18 years, 1 month, and 27 days old. So I was very young when I met him, and he's 5 years older than me. And he's very, very smart. My ex-husband's actually a really, really smart guy, and he had been in the military previous to our relationship. So I felt like he was very accomplished, and he was very, so, and again, he was a good husband for a lot of years. So it was easy to follow him. He was a good leader, and I like to be like a good lieutenant. I like to be a nice second in command. I've gone through like networking situations where they do like the personality assessments. I forget what they're called exactly. It's a 4-letter situation.
SWOT.
Yes. And, I learned a lot of really interesting things about myself. And one thing that I really enjoy doing, and I'm hoping it's not solely the codependency that causes this, but I like to be a good support person. I am okay not being the tip of the spear. I'm okay not being the star of the show. I'm okay I was always a cheerleader as a kid in school. That was my sport. I'll go cheer. And I love that because I'm cheering for others. I'm making a lot of noise for you. I want you to look at them. And it's just what I enjoy. So again, like in my healing, I'm trying to be the star of my own show and do my self-love and stuff like that. But the adversity of having no identity. Again, now we're going to even change your name. So let's go back to the maiden name that I had like let go of, didn't have any attachment to, didn't really feel, not that I didn't feel connected to my name. It was my brother's name. It's my dad's name, but it's not my name anymore. So readopting that name, going to sign. The first time I ever went to sign, my maiden name is an M for Morin. My married name was a B. So even trying to sign my name and not make the M a B, it's just a lot of sideways M's. Is it a B? Is it an M? We don't know. That was real. And I would start crying. So I would be at the store. I'd start signing my married name and I just start bawling, and the person selling me the lettuce is like, you good? And it was like, no, I'm not good. I'm breaking down. I need to go cry. And then I go home and cry. So that it lasted a while too. And the funny thing about, you were saying like when people are like, well, are you dating? Do you have a boyfriend? What's going on with you? The minute I got a divorce, the minute people found out that I was single, they wanted to know if I was getting onto the dating apps, which to me is wild, crazy stuff. I've never been on dating apps. I don't judge others if they want to use them, and I know they have a function, and that's great. But for me and all of my mental health issues, that would never be it for me. But I was just amazed that is what people thought would help me. And even when I would share with people like, well, I'm healing through codependency, they still thought, well, you should get out there and get to dating. It was like, oh my goodness, no. So the gentleman that had done that podcast with you, that has it's called Solo Single
Experience.
Solo.
Experience.
Yes. Very cool. I loved the show. I did look him up on Instagram. I did download the app. It's a really great concept that I think does a couple things. It combats loneliness. Whenever you're by yourself, if you're alone, instantly you're lonely. Everybody's concerned about your loneliness level. And I understand that chronic loneliness is definitely a terrible thing. Chronic anything is usually very, very bad. So we want to acknowledge that part too, that like, if your friends are isolating, definitely reach out, try to make them feel included in things. Everybody likes at least an invitation. Even if you have friends that aren't going to show up, extend the invitation so they know that you love them and that they're welcome. But it is okay to spend time alone. And I really did go from my parents' house to living with my husband, which then we procreated and had 2 more little humans living with us, many animals. And then my brother, who for many years, my brother was unwell with this brain disorder. It was my intention. It was my thought process. It was always my belief that when my parents passed away, my brother would come live with me and that I would take care of him until death. I knew that I would probably outlive him because we were only 2 years apart in age. But I did think that we would be together for a long time. So now Sam is gone. My 2 boys empty nested in 2019 and then 2022. Again, it's like, first and foremost, I'm a mom. I have to be thinking like a mom. And so even with my emotional breakdowns and all these things, I'm like, this is my boys' launch time. I have been working on this for 18 years with both of these kids to launch them properly. And I'm going to do this. I'm not going to break down to the point where, they want to stay with me forever and they're worried about me. No, you guys go. We're going to be okay. And I think I did a good job of it. I can tell you, you want to wait for the good stuff, for all the tools, but I think I did a good job in doing that. And so both of my boys did leave. They actually currently, both of my boys live out of state from me. So not only did they leave the nest, they left the state. And they, even with everything that I was going through, and even as close as we are and as sweet of the boys as they are, they were able to do that again without guilt, without worry. They feel good. They know that I'm okay. They know that everything that I'm doing moving forward is positive, and they feel good about it. So they left, and then my husband left. So in the wake of that, and just having no one in the house with me, that was crazy. And I did that for I don't know, maybe my baby stayed home with me for a little bit. So my husband left in September of 22, and then my baby had graduated in May of that year. He did stay with me until he was 20. So he stayed about another year and a half. He did one semester of QCC in Worcester, of community college, and it was a great experience for him, but it just wasn't for him, the college life. And so then he worked for a little bit, and then he actually did move out of state, and he found in that new state that he wanted to become an electrician, and he started that process. And so this May he's actually graduating. So I'm so proud of him that even though he did hang back with me for a little bit, I think he did want to make sure that I was good, and he was honest with himself about his path and what was right for him. And my other son is in the military. So he left home when he was 17 years old. When I moved him into college, it was a week before his 18th birthday. That kid could not get out of that house fast enough. So they're very different. And again, it's like I'm trying to be like, yay for my oldest and going to college and going to the military, yay. And then yay for my little one, like discovering that college isn't for you and becoming a working man and, traveling and all these things. I really wanted to be a cheerleader for them, do my motherly duty, which was to make them feel secure in their foundation so that they could launch properly, while I'm trying to pull myself out of the vortex of hell of not knowing what my name is, not knowing what year it is. I did start dating at one point. So by the summer of 23, my husband and I were legally divorced. And then and only then did I feel comfortable kind of putting myself out there a little bit. And when I did it in such a way that I had started to change my mindset. So that was part of my tools are my mindset change. And, eventually we can get to that. But I had a different idea about the way things were going to be completely. So, I entered the dating world in 1994 thinking I'm looking to find my husband. I want to have children. I did know that I wanted to do it young. Regardless of anything, my decision was to get married young and have kids young because I wanted to have children young. I'd had a couple of miscarriages. I suffered from endometriosis when I was a young woman, which had caused the miscarriages. And there was a time when I was told, the doctor said he didn't even know if I would be able to have children. So I did have a lot of pressure within myself for medical reasons to have those kids young. And I did all those things, and all that was great, and I loved it, and it was wonderful, and da 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 da. But now, entering the dating world in 2023, this is a whole different ballgame. I do not need a husband, nor do I want one. I own not one, but two houses. Okay, friends? I have two perfect children that I raised to adulthood. Nobody can tell me anything about mothering. I run a business, and it's a moderately successful, I don't want to be too braggy about it, but I'm successful in my business to the point where I can live. I love my clients. I have great, wonderful friends, and my parents are still living. So what could a dating partner add to this situation at this point? I don't need much. So it better be pretty good. And I'm a very busy person. I like to take my time and volunteer. That's how I make new friends. And really, that was kind of how I was vetting people for dating. So I was like, listen, if you show up somewhere, if you are trying to help a nonprofit, if you're trying to help the mission of an organization, if you are a helpful person, if you're a generous person, you're somebody that maybe I want to hang out with like a little bit more too, aside from this. But I want to see in action first. So I started volunteering quite a bit. And then that did bring some characters out of the woodwork. And that's been a lot of fun. But going through that divorce was the thing that almost took me out. And again, even with all of my privilege and my happy life, even the happiest people, or the people that have the textbook best life, the emotional turmoil and the physical damage that you can cause in yourself with living in a situation where your mind is not healthy and you're not in a good mindset, it could destroy you. It can take you right off the planet.
Yes, absolutely. And I got married twice and divorced twice. So, of living example, I can tell about the identity crisis. My first one was 7 years, and the second one was 10 years. And then I did change my name for the first marriage, but I didn't for the second marriage because I just changed my name when I became US citizen. So I didn't want to go through the social security or the name changes, all that stuff.
Right.
Um, but not only that marriage identity crisis, I did have identity crisis. My friend actually told me like I look like a ghost, soulless, when I closed my nonprofit organization, which I ran for 12 years, helping to teach music to juvenile offenders as a president and founder. And then when I closed it, it was such a loss because it was like my baby almost.
Sure.
And yeah, I can tell you how devastating it was. It felt, divorce included. So, it's very vulnerable of you and then brave of you to share these experiences. And I'm sure we have audience all over the world that can resonate and then really appreciate you sharing the story. Thank you.
Thank you.
So let's move on to the second part of the podcast, which is the tools that you use to overcome. You mentioned a little bit about regret and shaming and stuff, but can you please tell our audience? And then also before that, I just wanted to share that this is absolutely my favorite part of my podcast, which because these tools that people, our guests share are so real and so useful. I, in fact, used some of the tools that my guests shared with me. So, Cindy, can you just tell us exactly what was probably the best tool that you use to overcome these adversities?
So the best tool is learning, just really deeply understanding what is happening to myself. And I think that that's always something that I'm looking for in my autonomy and stuff, is really to understand what it is that's happening to me, why I'm acting the way I am, why I feel the way I feel, and to have the power to make a change. And so I have a few books that I'd like to share. So right off the bat, therapy. So cognitive behavioral therapy specifically is what I started in, that gave me all of these big aha moments with all my diagnoses, and really starting to understand the process of breaking down my thoughts, breaking down behaviors, and breaking down sort of historical things about my family and finding root causes of things. So that was it, getting into cognitive behavioral therapy, finding a good therapist. And the basis of cognitive behavioral therapy, I always love to like make the little triangle, so I could really keep it in my mind, is that you can only process something in your brain one way at a time. No matter how great we think we are at multitasking, the actual act of processing information, comprehension in your brain, it can only occur one of three ways at a time. So the first way, and the way that we, again, should always try to, is with reason, reasonably. We should try to reasonably process things through our mind. No matter how upset you are about something, you should be able to write down on a piece of paper what is happening and work through that. The other part, the other way that you can process is emotionally. And there's the crux of it. That's what ends up happening. Everybody's processing things with their emotional brain. And when you put it through that filter, you're only going to get a result that is of the maturity level of that person for their emotional intelligence. So we have IQ and we have EQ. And so learning about EQ, learning about my emotional intelligence level, I was 12 years old. I would break down completely. And I was like, oh my God, I can't keep that up. So I have to change that. And then learning a lot about the brain technically, again, from everything that my brother had gone through. He had a traumatic brain injury to his frontal lobe, and that is where all of your impulsivity, your decision making, it's all done right there. So because of that, he was not able to help himself with many, many different things in his life, including alcoholism that he suffered from. And so that was very difficult because that compounded his health issues as well. And so again, looking at myself, I was like, I need to identify my vices. I need to figure out why I'm acting like this, why I do this, why I do that. And then the third way that you can process is just behaviorally. You can just shut off every reason, every thing, and just move forward. And with your action, with your body, with that behavior, whatever the action is that you've chosen to do. So when I learned about cognitive behavioral therapy, when I learned about that triangle, and when I started interacting with my husband, for instance, through our divorce process, he would send me big, long text messages where he was trying to explain himself. And there was lots of words and things. And what I discovered right off the bat was as soon as my phone would go bling and I would look and it was my husband, I would feel a chest pain. I would get a pain like somebody was stabbing me in the heart. And I was like, oh my God. And I thought, well, that's not good. That's not a good thing, is it? I'm 100 and, I was 96 pounds by this point. I was also experiencing an irregular heartbeat. So my doctor couldn't figure out why my heartbeat wasn't on track. I had a Holter monitor at a certain point. I was keeping track of things, and that a lot of things came out with the Holter monitor because I was able to gauge exactly when it was that I was having cardiac incidences. And it was always when I was dealing with my ex-husband, anything related to the divorce. It's when I was emotionally triggered. So I was like, that's weird. So the next book I came up with has to do with vagal nerve toning. So we have the vagus nerve, VAGUS. It's the 10th cranial nerve. So thinks X marks the spot, 10th cranial nerve. It's our largest nerve that we have in our entire body. And it plugs right up into the emotional epicenter of our brain. It literally plugs into it. And then it comes down both sides of our neck, sort of under our ears. And as it enters our bodies, it's a nerve. It's like one sort of a string, but then there's points when it actually opens up and it becomes more strings. And the point when it does that is right about your heart, and it holds your heart, and right about your stomach, and it holds all of your intestines, and it touches every major organ in our body. So when I learned about that, I was like, why would nobody have told me this prior to 43 years old? Like, I feel like in my life, I should have been told distinctly about this beforehand, but they don't teach us this in American schools anyway. I don't know if you guys learned about the vagus nerve when you were growing up, but I learned nothing about this. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm highly, highly emotionally triggered right now. Obviously, I'm crying every day. I'm having all these breakdowns. If my nerves now are experiencing only that's all that these nerves are taking in, is just my raw, terrible emotion. And then that's going into my body and it's actively affecting my heart, my stomach. This makes sense. This is why I can't eat, because it wasn't that I didn't want food. I was hungry. I needed to eat. I knew I looked awful, but there was no hunger. My whole stomach had just shut down. The entire digestive process had just stopped. And it was very unhealthy, and it was causing my heart to be irregular. The whole thing, it was all just breaking down. So when I learned about vagus nerve toning, I thought, okay, so if we can, the nerves just do a couple of things. They vibrate very quickly and they create heat. So as I was having all these health problems, I was going to the doctor and I was like, wow, my heart, wow, my stomach. They were testing me internally. They did an EKG, they did an ultrasound of my heart. They were testing the organ itself from the inside. It was perfectly healthy. My stomach, the same thing. They did an endoscopy, they did all the oscomies, and nothing wrong with my stomach, nothing wrong with my intestines. I'm like, what the hell? What it is the nerve on the outside of these organs just burning. The nerves are just wrapped around, hot, vibrating, burning the ever living soul out of all of my little internal organs. And then on top of that, also, when you're emotionally triggered, your body, your brain creates endorphins, good and bad. So when I was nursing my baby, I would drop oxytocin on myself, and we would both go into this haze of happiness, and me and the milk drunk baby would just be in bliss. And that's a great thing. That's an endorphin that the brain creates, oxytocin. The brain also creates cortisol and all of those things that can increase your blood circulation. It's the fight or flight response. So basically, I was starting to learn how to help myself regulate out of that nervous system dysregulation. That really was it. And when I realized what I was doing and how much power I had, that's when everything changed, because I was like, I don't want to take meds. I was having a really hard time sleeping. I was like, I'm not taking meds to sleep. I was feeling very depressed. I'm like, I'm not taking meds for depression. I was feeling anxious. I'm like, I'm not doing it. And again, I don't judge anybody for taking meds, or I'm not trying to take down big pharma. For me personally, I did not want to do it because I knew that there was a way that I could medicate myself. Because I had done it with the baby. I had done it with my oxytocin. So I'm like, I know I can do this. And so breath work became very important. And again, it's all sort of connected. I was learning about these things, and then it was all sort of starting to overlap with each other. And I was learning how I could use it all together. So the first thing was understanding my brain processing. What is going on in my mind? Let's get it down. So I started journaling, and the journaling was very, very helpful, because looking back on some of these years that have passed, I don't even have active memory of some of that. And I know other traumatized people that I talk to, they're like, yeah, you just kind of black it out. It's just like a little black spots. It's like the rejected parts of the files, right? They're gone. But I wrote it down. So because I was journaling so diligently, I was really able to see into my own mind. And when I was blocking things out, I was like, why was I blocking that out? It was a person, it was a situation I was in, it was whatever. And I was able to start identifying things about what was making me feel unsafe, what was making me feel uncomfortable, what was giving me joy. So I loved that. So the cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, is amazing straight off the bat. Then the vagus nerve toning. That was just huge, because again, it stopped the madness of like going to the doctors, having all these tests, paying fees for, testing, and taking time off of work. And I didn't need to do any of that. What was wrong with my organs was that my nerves were just completely out of whack, and that they needed regulation. Once I realized that, then I was like, okay, how can I physically regulate my own nerves? Like, how does one even do that? I like biology. I like science, right? I like everything. I like history. I like to be explained. I like things explained to me. So that's the point that I was at. I was like, biologically, how do I dose myself? How do I make meds for myself with myself? Like, I know I can do it. And I could. So I don't have it with me. Of all the books that I brought with me today, I didn't bring it with me, but Wim Hof, the Wim Hof method. So this gentleman, his first name is Wim, W-I-M. His last name is Hof, H-O-F. He's from Amsterdam originally, and he wrote the book, The Wim Hof Method. It was recommended to me from a woman that was in book club with me. She is a chiropractor, very smart woman. I trust her. So I read the book, and it was right during my divorce. She could not have picked it at a better time. And what it basically taught me was you can do alchemy in your own body using your breath, and very, very easily. So I started doing this 11-minute routine. It's on YouTube. Like I said, I read the book, then I downloaded his app. He's got a website. He's very well known. If you start Googling him and deep diving him, he's been in the, Ripley's Believe It or Not. He's been on the Today Show, all these different things. And basically he wrote this book talking about breathing techniques that he used, that he came up with after he lost his wife. So his wife passed away. She did commit suicide. It was very sad. They were very in love. It wasn't like they had problems in their marriage. He loved her very deeply. She was just extremely, extremely depressed and had very deep mental health problems. So she did kill herself and left him with 4 little babies. So he had these 4 children that he had to raise. There was no options for him. He had to figure it out. So he had always, living in Amsterdam, he enjoyed the cold weather. He had always enjoyed sort of being outdoors and experiencing cold on his body. And he was a good meditator, things like that. And he came up with this breathing technique that basically is a series of taking in breath, holding your breath with lungs that are empty, have no breath in them, releasing air, holding your lung and bring air back in, and then holding your lungs with your lungs full of air and holding it for a certain period of time, and then exposing yourself to an acute cold shock. So as I mentioned earlier, anything that you do on a chronic level is not going to be good for you. Chronic, nothing is good. But certain things at an acute level, just a little quick whoop, are pretty good. And cold is one of them. And so when you are alchemizing yourself by taking this breath in, holding, releasing the breath, holding, doing this in a certain sequence, and then you're giving yourself a quick shot of cold, it creates an endorphin in your brain. And when it releases into your body, it feels fantastic. It gives you energy. It's doing all of those things that are the opposite of fight or flight. So when your body is dysregulated and you start to go into that fight or flight, fight or fawn, flight, or whatever it is that you're doing, because your nervous system is starting to break down, the opposite of that is giving yourself medicine and rewarding yourself and telling your body it's okay and making yourself feel good. It's somatic healing. So that was really the Wim Hof method breathing was the beginning of my somatic journey. And so I started doing that. Like I said, there's an 11-minute routine on YouTube that I put into headphones. And again, using music has been very helpful too, because when you're toning your nerve, you're trying to get to those nerves on either side of your neck. I like the AirPods or whatever you got, whatever you want to use, Beats. But you're going to get that vibration of the music in your ears going down your neck. It's going to start toning that nerve right out of the gate. So right as soon as it's going into your body, regulation. You're not even going to let it get past here. So there was that. So I'm put in my headphones, and his voice is very nice. He has a lovely accent. I just really enjoy him. So I started listening to his his routines to either put myself to sleep at night or wake myself up in the morning. When I do the sleep routine, I don't add the cold. I just go happily to sleep. But when I do my wake up routine, I do at the end of my shower, zap myself with about 30 seconds of cold water. You can just dip your hands and feet in cold. I know there's a lot of like polar plunge things that are popular now. This is the basis of what that is. And so I would say that I support any of it. Any way that anybody wants to introduce that cold piece, do what you got to do. So that was it. Wim Hof, he's such a beautiful person, great dad, and I just loved learning about him. And it was one of the biggest tools to help me regulate my body right off the bat was the Wim Hof method of breathing. And then attached this wonderful, amazing book that my client, my therapist, I'm her client, told me to read. And if I may read an excerpt from it, because this was just very profound for me. So this was when I was first learning about my codependency, trying to understand really how much it was affecting my very life source, my body, and how I live. And so within this book, so it's called Attached, The New Science of Adult Attachment and How It Can Help You Find and Keep Love. I wasn't necessarily trying to find or keep love, but I was trying to understand about attachments. It is written by Amir Levine, MD, and Rachel Heller. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. And this part of the book, they're referring to a study that the University of Toronto had done. And they were basically saying that the implications of the study were profound, because when our partner is unable to meet our basic attachment needs, we experience a chronic self of disquiet and tension that leaves us more exposed to various ailments. Not only is our emotional well-being sacrificed when we're in a romantic relationship with someone who doesn't provide secure base, but so is our physical health. Having a partner who is inconsistently available or supportive can be truly demoralizing and debilitating, and it can literally stunt our growth and stymie our health. So that is 33 pages into it, folks. Okay. Like I was not far into this book when I read that, and I had to shut the book down. I had to go lay down in my bed and cry, because I was like, that's my husband. He was a good husband in XYZ way, but being consistently reliable to me and doing all those things that I absolutely needed, it could have killed me. It could have taken me out completely. So that really just wrapping my brain around that, understanding how much power I gave another person my whole life and really making the decision to take the power back. That was huge for me. Also, The Body Keeps the Score. This was a profound book. It's very thick. It's very esocentric. It's very heavy. It's written by a doctor for doctors. So I wasn't recommended to read this book. I just happened to find it, and I was like, I'm gonna read it anyway. And it was hard. It was thick and hard. The very beginning of the book starts with the author is explaining that they have a person in their practice. They're a therapist, and the person in their practice is a gentleman that had served in the Vietnam War, and he was having a lot of PTSD issues. And the gentleman actually said, the reason why I'm having so much problems moving forward is not because of anything that I saw in war. It's because of what I did in war. I have shame and guilt about what I did in that war. And so seeing people's heads blown off and all these things that you would think would be the things that would traumatize people, it's not. It's he knew that he was a good person, but he was doing bad things because he was in the ravages of war and he was in the thick of the terribleness and all those things. And so this doctor now had to try to help this person. And he's like, how do I do it? And one of his colleagues had actually written a paper called I believe it was called When Soldiers Report Atrocities. And, that the doctor determined that when these people are actively acknowledging and really coming to terms with some of these terrible things that they did, their bodies are taking the absolute hit on it. The emotional turmoil is just killing us. And so all of America, I really think, and probably most of the world, the health problems that we have, they're related to chronic inflammation. The only thing that our bodies can do is try to communicate with us and try to save itself, because so many systems of our bodies are meant to be self-regulating, to be self-regenerating. I mean, I'm a skin girl. The skin is your second largest organ in your body, or your largest organ in your body. And the skin cells are turning over every 28 days until the day you die. So it's the body's always trying to help itself. It's how much are we impeding that or stopping that by introducing all of these terrible emotions that will just stop us in our tracks and degrade us and harm us. So The Body Keeps the Score was a deep one. It was a big reckoning for me. And I loved that book. I thought it was great. The other ones that I could just very quickly tell you about are called Breath by James Nestor. Incredible. About breathing, if you want to start deep diving breath work and breathing. And then finally, a really good one that I enjoyed was Keep Sharp by Sanjay Gupta. And I don't think that people realize that Dr. Gupta, he's not just, the CNN reporter. He is a brain surgeon, and he did brain surgery in Iraq. He did brain surgery in the tents of Iraq and was helping our soldiers during all the terrible stuff that went on over there. And the reason why that book was so profound to me was, again, I was not very deep into this book whatsoever. When I happened across a situation, a part of it that was very familiar to me. And when I started reading about it, I was like, oh yeah, I've seen that before. Again, this gentleman has been in things like Ripley's Believe It or Not, on these sensationalized kind of programming. You've heard about this guy, and he had gotten a pole through his head, and then he lived, and he was like a big medical phenom because he had lived after this, and they were able to keep him alive and all of this. Okay. As I'm reading this book by Sanjay Gupta, that's about Keep Sharp, which is about keeping your brain sharp and staying focused and fighting Alzheimer's and dementia, all these things that are very prevalent in our life right now. This gentleman came up. His name was Phineas Gage, and this happened to him in the 1860s. So my brother got his traumatic brain injury in 2004. This gentleman, this happened to him in 1865. And right here it says that he was the most famous neuroscience patient ever. So my question at this point was, why did the U.S. military not understand in 2004 that a traumatic brain injury that was the same exact one as this guy was going to eventually degrade, cause seizures, and cause death? It was a terminal illness. There was a lot that went on emotionally for me upon learning this, really understanding what was done here in the sacrifice of my brother, and probably a lot of people like him that served in Afghanistan and Iraq, or anybody of our generation or any other generation that may be affected by CTE from too much football, too much hockey, too much motorcycle accidents, too much whatever. The biggest tool was the realization that I needed, and the education, the seeking, that I need to help my own brain damage. I have sustained a significant amount of brain damage, just as if I were to get in an accident. If I were to get into a car accident, have a terrible brain injury, henceforth my friends would be more patient with me. They would understand if my behavior's off. They would, if I have a different personality changes, they would accept that. You go through a traumatic incident, and again, for me, in the middle of suburbia, while the sun is still shining, it's harder for people to get their brain around the fact that my brain is damaged, and you're not going to have the same C as you had a couple of years ago. And she's moving forward. She may change again, because we're going to change our brain function. We're going to actually change the way our minds function, and we're going to help and heal our bodies. So that was the biggest thing, learning about brain function, and then learning about somatic healing, which is the connection. It's that point where your brain and your body are on the same page. They know that a bear is not chasing you. Because if you're in the fight or flight is the biggest one that people know about nervous system dysregulation. As soon as you become dysregulated, and your body's trying to help you, it throws you into this fight or flight response. And it's good if a bear is chasing you. So it's like, I don't want to say it's a bad thing. It's actually every single thing that our bodies do, from getting a sunburn to heart palpitations to anything, is really just that communication piece of like, hey, I need help. Hey, stop harming yourself. And when you get more in tune with your body and with your emotions, and you're only trying to do positive for yourself and help yourself, you're going to make different choices than you made before. And it may even be startling to some people when people start seeing you heal, and they aren't ready to do the work that they need to do to heal themselves, and they just kind of want to stay in that mucky space. They may also actually even give you a little bit of trouble about it, which I've encountered, which is kind of weird. I never thought I'd meet anybody that wanted to stop me from my healing, but you do. And when I encounter that situation, I don't take it personally, because again, in that codependent way, if I have friends that aren't responding to me the way I like, or that they're being mean to me or whatever, I cannot depend on them and their acceptance for my happiness. I cannot take personally what they are saying or doing. A lot of times, most of the time, pretty much all the time, they're projecting. So it's that they're unhappy with themselves. They have shame, they have guilt, whatever the case may be, and they're now going to project that onto me. And I don't deal with that anymore at all. So my boundary game is so tight. You'd be so proud of me, Juri. I've been so good with my boundaries. And because of that, I'm just a much happier person, because I do not allow myself to go down these roads. And when I do start getting emotionally triggered, and the most natural thing, the thing that I'd always done my whole life, which would be to run to the bedroom to cry about it, I don't do that anymore. I make a different choice. I do different things. I breathe. I stretch, I do all the things that I need to do. I call a friend, I eat something yummy, I do what I have to do to regulate myself and to reward myself and to love myself. And I always have a better outcome, always, because I discovered, in all of my journaling, when I would break down and just be emotional, I was always making the situation worse. I was always killing any diplomacy that it could have been, discovered between me and this other party. I've wasted time. My eyes are puffy. It's like, this did nothing to help me. So getting better coping skills and just generally being a happier person, but for real, because I was always like a happy, upbeat person. And it was always because I was pushing something down, pushing. And then what was left was a very condensed version of like self-loathing, bad self-esteem, hatred, sadness. So I just don't do that anymore. I'm like, no, thanks. Even when I'm sad about my brother being gone, that's the most ultimate thing, is somebody has passed away. There is no going back. You can't apologize and make it better. So you really have to live with that and live with it in the moment in a healthy way, and know that it won't pull you down forever and ever and ever. So I was able to use my Wim Hof breathing, which I love so much. All of my different little knowledge books that I was able to go and grab and do. And the final thing I think in the somatic healing is booty yoga. So whenever I tell people this, they always get like a giggle out of it. But booty is the name of it, like the brand. So it's a brand. So BUTI is specifically what I practice. I've done yoga for probably like 12 years. I've done yoga very religiously. I was a runner for many years. So I've always been very physical in like working out and stuff. I've always been in pretty good shape. But I very intentionally now work out specifically and do very specific things because I'm trying to get a very specific outcome. So it's like, yes, I want good lung capacity. Yes, I want muscles. Yes, I don't want to be overweight. But more specifically, I'm trying to drain my body of lymph. So help the lymphatic drainage process happen. Toning my nerves, making sure that my body is in perfect nervous system regulation. And then just really having a nice baseline for health. So whatever that is for blood pressure, heart rate, body temperature, like I just want to be at a nice, healthy level. And because of that, I'm in the best shape of my life. I'm almost 47 years old and I'm in better shape than pretty much everybody that I know. And I say that proudly at this point. I'm having good self-esteem right now about it because I'm very, very consistent in my practice and I'm very proud of my healthy body. I'm really, really proud of the fact that my body is so strong that I can lift what I can, that I can, I've given birth before. Both of my children were born with, I had no meds in my system. So my little tiny body was able to produce a human twice. Very, very proud of that. And I think just standing in the power of my body and how I can heal myself and pull myself out of stuff, it's so empowering. It feels so, so good. It's the absolute best. So I love my booty yoga. It's really about, all in the trunk of our body, all of our organs sit in a very particular way, kind of like the Operation game. If you ever played Operation when you were little, everything's fit in there in such a certain way. When you're doing anything with your body that is like twerking or like hula hooping, when you're getting a full range of motion in your hip muscles and in your hip joints, you're going to be taking all of those organs in your body and wringing them out like a cloth. You're getting all of that cortisol, all that adrenaline, and even the good stuff. Like I mentioned oxytocin earlier about when you nurse your babies and you're dropping oxytocin. It feels good in the moment because that endorphin does that for you. It makes you feel euphoric and happy and all that. But that liquid is still in your body and it needs to work out in the system that your body was made to do. And a lot of that is done in the groin area. And so, even last night, Bad Bunny performed, and I already saw so many negative things online about how sexualized it was. All the dancing was so sexual. It really wasn't. If you look at the dancing, it is a lot of movements in the hips, in the pelvis, in that area. And so if you are associating hip movements with sexuality, again, that's projection, friend. That's when I think of people moving their hips, I think of them being healthy. I think of that whole entire unit of their body moving as one fluid unit and doing all the things that it needs to do, which is to bring everything to the middle and flush it out. And it's triumphant. I mean, there's nothing better than a release of whatever sort that is needed. And so when you release all of that stress hormone and all that junk that you've been holding on to all day, it feels fantastic. So booty yoga has been very, very helpful to that. It's done with beats and it's very like rhythmic. So again, anything that is affecting vibrations and helping to tone in that way is going to be really just enjoyable, fun, and then very, very effective. So I've loved my yoga too.
Well, thank you very much. So let's wrap up this podcast with the last question, which is the gift that came from it. So, Cie, what is the gift that came from your adversity?
I think it's just the complete empowerment that I felt, all of this knowledge that I've learned and all these things that I've taken into practice and that I've been able to put into action for myself. It's given me such an incredible sense of empowerment, of autonomy. Again, I had so much identity questioning and it's just such an awful thing to not have that true autonomy and knowing who you are as a person. It's given me such a sense of self, and really helped my self-esteem. I think my self-esteem has never been better. I do know I'm a beautiful person inside and out. I do know that I deserve love. I do know that I have a lot of love to give. And I know that anything that anybody has done to punish me in my life has been a projection on their part. And I process it now in my brain when I think those thoughts, because again, those thoughts are always going to be there. I process them differently now, with pity for that person. I feel bad that somebody it has so much, again, hatred for themselves, sadness inside of themselves, that they would be mean to a person as beautiful as me, that they would be rude or to somebody as kind as I am. So it's really sad, and I process it differently now as something, as a pity, more so than something against myself. And because of that, my self-esteem has just gone up and up and up, and it feels wonderful. And I feel like my capacity now to love and to be understanding to other people is greater, and I find great value in that.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your experiences and then tools and then the gift that came from it. And thank
Thank
you
you.
for, yes, and then thank you so much for everyone for tuning in to A Gift from Adversity. We had a great episode today, and then I'm looking forward to having more episodes and having more guests from all over the world. And thank you, Cie, again for joining us today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It was wonderful.
Great. So we'll see you next time.